So let's start our webinar for today. A very warm welcome to everyone who joins the webinar today. We'll wrap up RSNA 2021 and are again focusing on the clinical value that AI can create. We have terrific speakers tonight. My name is Franz Pfister. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of the company DeepSea. I'll give you a brief intro and a quick recap from last time. We had our first webinar in September 2021. You can find the recording on our YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and look at and watch the old webinar, which featured speakers from our partners Gleamer, Cure, and Aidence. Today, we will continue with our webinar series to give you some background. We are all active in the field of radiology. We are seeing that radiology is tremendously under pressure with the workload increases in the US and Europe of up to 2.5x over the last 10 years, with an average of 1.1x increase in the number of radiologists. This really is a demand supply gap, which can lead to physician burnout, senior positions being unfilled, and of course, an increase in error rate. The good news is that AI can really help fill that demand supply gap and poses a transformative technology. We've seen, especially in the last 1, 2, 3 years, a lot of clinical validation on the value of AI, and that AI can really make radiologists faster in their decision-making, more accurate, and much more efficient. We as DeepSea are a platform company. We are building an AI operating system, an ecosystem that provides a single installation solution to our customers to effortlessly integrate regulatory cleared RAD AI algorithms at scale. And those AI algorithms come from our great partners. All of the solutions are regulatory cleared. All of them are CE marked. Many are FDA cleared already. And we are on our mission to bring AI to mass adoption at scale. We have, as DeepSea, as many of you attended RSNA this year. It was really a fantastic event, although the attendee numbers have been lower than in the past years. Nevertheless, the quality of discussions and interactions that we had and experienced were amazing. And we wanted to host this webinar session to look back and look at the hot topics that we have identified at RSNA 2021. So we identified 6 hot topics in the industry. One is AI deployment at scale and how it can work. We have many AI vendors. The full AI showcase was full of great companies with great solutions. There is a high clinical interest, so there are many clinical customers, but there's poor standardization regarding deployment and also integration, which is our second point, especially clinical workflow integration. I think many have realized that AI algorithms are not necessarily products. There is really poor standardization of integration into existing infrastructures and workflows. And this is a hot topic of discussion and how this can be facilitated. The third one is the validation of AI performance. There are existing biases in especially deep learning models, and there are generalizability issues. Again, in terms of validation of the AI performance, there's poor standardization in the industry, and this is one of the hottest topics at the moment that we are seeing. The fourth one is the clinical validation of AI, which is a little bit different than the third point. We are seeing the tendency that many clinicians are asking for the clear proof of the clinical value and also the improvement in patient outcomes, which is, of course, really understandable. And this leads me to my fifth point, which is the financing of AI, very closely related to the fourth point. In terms of the value that AI can create, we can adapt the clear return on investment calculations and analyze the beneficiary structure, which players in the hospital and in the healthcare ecosystem benefit most, and are starting to create first streams of financing and reimbursement. And I've seen some evidence in some geographies, but this is just the beginning. The sixth one we call technological literacy. We are seeing more and more trend on emphasis on AI education. also educating physicians how AI should be validated, should be integrated, and should be assessed. We are also seeing the trend to build ecosystems with open interfaces. And of course, we as DeepC are on a mission to address all of those challenges to help and facilitate the mass adoption of AI at scale. In this seminar, we are looking at a couple of different areas that we have highlighted. Our general broad topic is the clinical value of AI, which is associated with many of those hot topics. And I'm really glad that I'm able to host this webinar and the session tonight. For us in Germany, we're sitting in Munich, it's tonight. For some speakers, it's early morning. I'm welcoming Daniel Chow from UCI Center for AI and Diagnostic Medicine. It's your morning today. Then I'm welcoming Tracy Finlayson, who is the Regional Sales Manager of Lunit. Then I'm welcoming Dr. Jens Opalka, who is the Chief Medical and Marketing Officer of the AI company mediaire. And then I'm welcoming Professor Alexander Huppertz, who is himself a radiologist, and he's the founder of the company NeoQ, producing the product radio report, a really great product in the structured reporting domain. And he will highlight how AI can be combined with structured reporting and how clinical value can be created in this regard. So really great speakers. I'm very happy to host the session this Wednesday. And I'm handing over to Daniel Chow, who is the co-director at UCI Center for AI and Diagnostic Medicine. He is as well one of Avicenna's co-founders with Peter Chang, Cyril, and Faisal. In the last years, Daniel was contributing as well as co-director at Precision Health with AI as assistant professor in residence, Department of Radiological Science at the University of California, Irvine. Then since September 2021, he contributes as interim section chief at UCI and is a research associate at Long Beach Healthcare System. So your CV is really long. I don't want to lose more time. It's really impressive that you joined this session tonight. I'm super excited to hear your talk, Daniel, and I'm handing over to you and stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. So let me see if I can get this to work. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about my perspective mostly as a neuroradiologist interested in AI and really focusing around stroke imaging and asking the question, is there value? So first, one additional disclosure for myself is that I am not a software developer, I am a physician. And the topics that I want to be covering today is, where is AI for stroke triage and imaging? And can we move beyond some of these technical endpoints? So this is kind of a busy slide, but this kind of shows the accepted algorithm for when we have a stroke patient for how we treat. And these stars represent, these are areas where we have time sensitivity and where AI has been felt as a tool to help triage these patients, whether it's clearance of a hemorrhage or detection of an LVO. Just for a brief background for significance, in the United States, intracranial hemorrhage affects over 100,000 patients per year with a high morbidity and mortality. About half of these patients will have mortality, and the remaining half will have severe disability for those who survive. And some of the challenges that we have is occasionally we do have these hemorrhages. This was a pediatric patient which had some early contusions, which subsequently bloomed. Another challenge that we've had is being able to quantify the amount of hemorrhage. So this is the same patient, but what had happened was that the patient was tilted a little bit differently in the scan. So the scan was read as marked interval expansion, when in reality, it was just the effect from having the patient tilted differently, so the hemorrhage looks differently. Another area that we've seen a large interest is with the detection for large vessel occlusion. This is significant because when a large vessel is blocked, say middle cerebral artery, we know that this is associated with both increased odds of mortality and also increased odds of morbidity. The other added interest more recently in the US is the Centers for CMS has created a new technology add-on payment, or an NTAP. And what this allows is for healthcare systems to reduce the cost of acquiring these systems. There's an add-on payment for up to an additional $1,080 per patient with stroke DRG that uses this kind of technology. And so far, a few of the vendors, Viz, Avancina, Rapid, have been able to carry this out. In terms of the widescape, I think the introduction nailed it. If you were at RSNA this year, you'd see multiple vendors who are now offering multiple solutions. And this is just a snapshot of what's currently available for just stroke specifically. Most of this is within both ICH, LVO detection, some work now with aspects, some of the old traditional stuff also with perfusion. And you have this swath of a combination of deep learning, machine learning. Some areas for, like, say, perfusion imaging is still using traditional regression, but that's kind of where we are for landscape. But what I really want to focus on is kind of that topic that you had mentioned earlier is, can we move beyond some of the technical endpoints? And I think one of the frustrations in this field is that so much of this work has been really focused on accuracy, sensitivity, how good are we at detecting these hemorrhages? Really, the question that we need to be moving towards is, what is the diagnostic impact? What is the operational impact? Are we actually improving lives of our patients, our referrers, our radiologists? Is there actually an outcome benefit for our patients? And the reason why this is important for us as clinicians, as scientists, is that really this is for accountability. This is just from 2016 through 2018, and I think for those who've been attending RSNA regularly, we've seen this explosion of AI tools. And a lot of times we are left wondering now, we have a lot of tools, we have a lot of hype, arguably, and what is the actual valuation of some of these tools? I'll give you an example. If you look at, say, large vessel occlusion, for most stroke centers, when they bring a suspected stroke patient to the scanner, the stroke team is usually with the patient in the scanner, and they're actively looking at the imaging. And if there's any question, they'll call radiology right away. So when we talk about turnaround time for our reports, that might be a good metric for a radiology KPI, but is that actually going to yield benefit for patients? And I'll touch on that in a little bit. And I think one of the things right now is, as a group for radiology, I think we're still trying to figure out where we are on this hype cycle. I think we're probably somewhere in between here. There's still a lot of hype, but I think that some of the evidence coming out right now has really stemmed, towards this technical efficacy, and we're still waiting to see the diagnostic impact. So going back to that large vessel occlusion example, one of the studies that we did was we looked at pre-post LVO detection for one of the vendors. And what we found was our turnaround time, especially for trainees, especially for the middle of the night, improved from about 30 minutes to sub 10 minutes and sometimes sub 5 minutes, which is really, really good. When at night you have a single trainee by themselves in the hospital, and now they're being able to report. However, the actual clinical benefit was minimal. And what we found with talking with the stroke team is that, they're usually aware of it. If they have any questions, they're already in conversations with the neuroradiologist and the neuro-IR team. And so the analogy I give is, I feel like a lot of these applications, these are really meant to be cogs, and we're trying to fit them like wheels in our own usual workflow system. And really probably the biggest bang for success is, how do we reinvent some of our workflows? This actually may not make our lives easier as radiologists, but we have to figure out, how do we make this useful for our referrers also? The other thing I want to touch on is, and this is what we want to avoid. This is just a smattering from Twitter. Sam's a colleague from Yale. And one of the challenges we have is this whole swath of false positives. And this can actually detract from the field. Once you have this initial negative experience, first impressions are lasting impressions. And now we will have a group of people who are just, it sounds really hypey, and the whole field gets labeled like that. So I think we need to be very, very careful for how we present our results. This is just one example for my kind of small pet peeve, and this will be my last example. This is kind of a reminder of what sensitivity and specificity is. Sensitivity is the ability to correctly classify someone who has disease-free, and sensitivity as someone who has a disease. A lot of companies are always talking about, we have 90% sensitivity and 90% specificity, and that sounds really, really impressive. However, the challenge is, when you take, what you really should also be looking at is, what does this mean for my own practice? So this is in a company. So let's say company X, they train on a balanced data set. So that means that equal hemorrhage and equal no hemorrhage, because that's what a lot of regulatory approvals want. They want you to take half abnormal, half no abnormal, and see what the performance is. And they have a 90% sensitivity and a 95% specificity, and then the PPV and a negative predictive value will track that. A positive predictive value means that if I say positive, it really is positive. The problem is that in real life, 50% of patients who have CTs don't have hemorrhages. It's more like 5%. And so if we were to make this a real world data set, this is the same sensitivity and the same specificity. However, the positive predictive value drops to 47%. That means that every time you get an alert from AI, you can flip a coin. Maybe it'll be positive, maybe it won't be positive. And so this is where we really need to push vendors for not just these arbitrary numbers, but to really ask, what will this benefit for my population? We had an example the other day with a colleague at another hospital. I was talking to him, and they had a patient where the AI software correctly called a large vessel occlusion, but nothing happened for the next day. And this was an inpatient, not a stroke alert. This was from something else. And everyone ignored the page because they know that when they hear positive, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. And they're saying, oh, well, we didn't get consulted by stroke, and we hear this alert, we assumed it was a false positive. And that's the exact opposite of what you want to avoid. I talked to another hospital group and how they're using this tool, and they're using the AI tool that every time they hear alert, it just lets them know that the image is done. And so they know that the image is available for review, which is not how you intend for these softwares to be used. So I do think that, and then ultimately that's what causes this burnout. I had this high group of false positives, didn't even really need the software. So I do think that a lot of these tools are very, very powerful. I think these tools are doing what they're designed to do right now, where they're trying to detect, they're trying to identify. But I think one of the things we need to figure out is what is a better way to evaluate these tools? What is a better way to bring this into our workflows? And really focusing not just on the technical efficacy, but are patients' lives being improved? Are we reducing hospital length of stay? Is mortality, morbidity going down? Is there actual benefit? And so that was my 8 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Perfectly in time and a really terrific presentation. I'm getting more and more excited. Thank you so much. So I'm handing over next to Tracy Finlayson. Maybe let me bring up the screen in the meantime. Tracy is from the company Lunit, is a regional sales manager. She is with Lunit for over a year now. Prior to this, she has worked with Fujifilm and GE with a total of 12 years in the sector. Really looking forward to your presentation, Tracy. I'm handing over to you and give the screen share also to you.
Thank you. I hope everyone can see my screen okay.
Perfectly.
I've had to coordinate sharing a screen and taking off mute at the same time. So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you for allowing us to share our experience to date. And obviously I did this presentation at RSNA, but I've added a few other comments based on the conversations we had at RSNA and some of the key conversations and what we were hearing. So quickly, just a very quick overview about Lunit as a company. So we are a global company, originally founded in South Korea and in 2013. And as our success has continued, we've grown as a team, now employing over 240 plus. It's probably more than that. It goes up on a weekly basis. So, and amongst that, we've got our quality, we've got our medical doctors, we've got regulatory, engineers, development. So, we're fully fledged now. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on, though, is the quality of our clinical validation and clinical reviews. And to support this, you can see here, we've got over 100 publications in many well-respected journals. And these are all accessible as well. So if anybody does want to read up on them, they can do. But in order to develop our highly accurate algorithms, we've had to ensure that we use high quality training images. And these have all got proven ground truth with either CT or biopsy proven. So first of all, a very quick overview again, just of what our products are. So we've got Lunit Insight CXR. This identifies 10 of the most common abnormal radiological findings. And as we are on a time limit, I will let you read that list yourself on the screen. Findings are displayed either as an abnormality score. Obviously, the higher the abnormality score, the higher the likelihood of an abnormal finding. And one of the key things, and certainly in conversation at RSNA that we found, is our outputs are flexible. So we can show either as a heat map, either as a contour, or both. And certainly speaking with people at RSNA, there's a real mix as to what people are looking for. And again, it depends very much on their workflow and workplace. Intended use of Insight CXR is to act as an aid for reporting and to support clinical decision making. And I'm going to sort of cover the workflow bits later on. So one area that we did hear quite a lot of comments on is about the opportunity to support early detection of lung cancer. And with using Lunit Insight, we're either looking at improving reporting performances or picking up incidental nodules, which require further investigation. Again, with the current situation, certainly in the UK within the NHS, there's a lot of backlogs, there's a lot of GP requests coming in. So there's definitely an opportunity for picking up an earlier diagnosis. Example I've got on the screen here is a case where a nodule was originally missed, where if the AI had been used, potentially detected at a score of 16.7. Missed again on second image, and then was finally reported in 2016, so 2 years later, with an abnormality score of 90.7. I think we can see that the impact of improving these statistics would improve patient outcome, and we can clearly see the difference in 5-year survival rates between early and late diagnosis. And obviously this has got cost savings, as well as we can potentially look at less complex treatment paths. So looking at summary with the value that we can offer with this, and again, I think it's really key to mention that value means different things to different customers. So, important part of the process of identifying value is speaking with customers and finding out what their value is. But with a quality validated algorithm and the right integration, we can certainly offer many benefits to different pathways and different patient groups. And it's about identifying where that value sits. So moving on to our pink screen, which is our mammography product. So this is Lunit Insight MMG. And the main purpose of this is to detect breast cancer. And again, similar to the CXR product, it will display an abnormality score, but in this instance, we can also display a density score. Again, the higher the abnormality score, the higher the likelihood of an abnormal finding. And again, similar to the CXR, our outputs are flexible. So we've got the ability to display just what the customer needs, be it as a heat map or as a contour. And again, here we're looking at aiding support reporting and clinical decision making. Similar to chest, again, we're hearing comments about the opportunity to support early detection of cancer through improved reporting performance. And I think a key factor, especially in screening programs and the potential of using AI there, is if you miss that diagnosis at the first point of screening, it may be several years later before that opportunity comes up again. And again, this example is just showing where an abnormality of cancer was missed, and then missed again, and then finally detected on the third imaging. And again, if it's a screening round that there may be a few years between, that can have a big impact on 5-year survival rates. I think the ability as well to improve the performance and reporting times is a critical consideration, especially when looking at these national screening programs, where there's currently a lot of backlog following on from COVID. And also we've got a limited workforce doing these reportings. So when we look at the value of mammography, again, it's about identifying what the value is. And I think as well for mammography, key to point out, we can fit into both screening and symptomatic workflows. So although we've got the high quality algorithm, what we actually need to look at is how do we deliver that value to customers? And a lot of that sits with the quality of the integration we can offer. So in order to optimize potential benefits, we need to look at what integrations we can offer. And this is why working with partners such as DeepSea is so valuable. So the ability to integrate seamlessly into the daily work list is the best way to optimize it. And the good thing is with this is we can be looking at different workflows, be it in an emergency department, be it in ICU, be it with GP reporting, because we know they've all got their unique approaches. By allowing the prioritization of work lists, we can allow different opportunities such as triaging, so triage of normal, prioritization within a work list, again, speeding up the reporting and hopefully reducing some backlogs. And this is just an example of how one of our integrations could look, displaying the AI abnormality score alongside the detected findings. This is an example of what an integration potentially look like in PACS. Again, we're displaying the overall case abnormality. We can display that within thumbnails and also details into DICOM headers. So again, we've got standards in there. With the deep integration, we can also look to send them back to PACS. Again, this is going to allow for continuity and saving time. And we can also not only send the images with the output, but we can also send reports back into PACS. And certainly speaking with various groups, there's definitely a demand, to see the outputs within a live system, be that the PACS or RIS. But what they want to see that is easily. They don't want to be having lots of clicks. They don't want to be searching. You don't want to be using additional monitors. They just want to be able to switch it on and off and see the outputs. So again, when we look at delivering the value and quality, we've really got to consider the customer voice. And I think, as I mentioned before, different customers have different drivers and have different values. And I think what we do all agree is that we all need to work together to ensure a successful implementation, obviously with happy customers at the end. And this is just an example of some of the statements from our customers. So thank you. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for this great talk. It's really fantastic to get all of those perspectives all together. So I'm really thrilled looking at the participants of the session, which is close to 80. That's amazing that the interest is so high in this webinar. We are really happy that all of you in the audience are joining. Apparently, this is a topic which is of high interest also to the audience. We can again emphasize that you can just type your questions in the Q&A panel. We will pick them up later in the discussion round when we are going into the discussion session with the speakers. Of course, you can also ask your questions later, but the likelihood of the question being answered is of course higher if you already have it at hand. So to quickly share again my screen, going to the next talk, which is coming from Dr. Jens Opalka, who is the Chief Medical and Marketing Officer at the Berlin-based company mediaire, which is also a partner of ours at our DeepSea platform. It's a great pleasure to have you, Jens, to join our session and contribute to the session. I give a brief overview of your CV. You are a colleague, you're a medical doctor trained in neurology, almost 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry in European and global functions. You were always dedicated to CNS disorders, in particular multiple sclerosis. So it's no surprise that mediaire attracted you in 2019 to help expand the use of AI-based solutions and in order to improve patient outcomes. It's great to have you. I'm again stopping sharing my screen, handing over to you, and I'm looking forward to your talk.
Thank you, Franz, for the kind introduction, and I would like to take you to neuroradiology again, and hope to convince you that by using AI-based toolkits like our mdbrain solution, you can really add diagnostic precision and at the same time gain efficiency. So if you look at, let's say, typical issues in uroradiology as of today, there are several, of course, and I picked two. Number one, there are a lot of, let's say, time-consuming routine tasks like the, let's say, quantifications of multiple pathologies like white matter lesions and multiple sclerosis, for instance. Yeah. So if you really were to compare lesion dynamics in comparison to a prior scan, and you have a patient with medium lesion load, 20, 30 lesions maybe, so it can be a time-consuming task if you want to do it precisely. Yeah. This is topic number one. Topic number two is there are several areas where, if we are honest to ourselves, we tend to judge and assess subjectively, or at best using semi-quantitative scales, like the assessment of brain atrophy, and that leads typically to a high inter-rater variability. So, of course, there might be quite clear cases like this guy here, where I think the inter-rater variability might be close to zero, assessing that the person has maybe a significantly reduced brain volume. But if I take you to a real life example of a 65-year-old male with cognitive, with a very mild cognitive impairment, you have to judge whether something is pathological, you might be much more difficult. And I would expect a significant inter-rater variability here. Yeah? And if you exaggerate it a bit, you could ask, isn't it time to quantify objectively instead of guesstimating or estimating? Yeah? And we would like to take it one step further by not only measuring it using our tools, but comparing whatever you measure with a normative population, and hence provide the radiologist not only with an, let's say, image, but with a report that is close to a classical lab report with a clear indication of pathological parameters. For instance, you see here in our report in the page 2 here in the tables already, without being able to read it, there are several aspects are highlighted indicating pathological values, so you're able to digest that information quite quickly and efficiently. If it comes again to quantification of pathologies like white matter lesions, we can also automate that, so nobody has to count him or herself, but the system can do that quite reliably meanwhile. Yeah? And we've proven that by winning the MICAI challenge last year for longitudinal lesion quantification. Yeah? And as a result, we could claim that we can bring, using AI systems, clinical trial standards into daily clinical care, yeah? And at the same time gain efficiencies. Yeah? So these are the two the main areas where we are engaged at the moment. So, and how does it work? So we take, as a specialist on MRI, the MRI images, apply different methods of machine learning, most predominantly neural networks, so deep learning technologies to perform segmentation tasks, segmentation of regions of interest in the brain, but also pathologies don't belong into the brain, like lesions, aneurysms, tumors. We provide comparison to prior exams to re-quantify dynamics in those pathological processes. But in some areas like brain volumetry, of course, it's essential not only to compare with prior scans, but to have a normative population at hand. And we do that with a large population of almost 8,000 healthy individuals. Meanwhile, that enables us in the age range of 10 to 99 years, based on age, sex, and intracranial volume, to derive a normal value for each region of each age point of a patient, and derive two main deliverables for the radiologist. Number one, well-structured quantitative reports, and number two, in order also to avoid the black box warning. And one of the colleagues mentioned that in the chat today already, that we have to have a way to control the AI system, also to gain trust in the system's capabilities. And we try to provide that, or enable that, by providing the full segmentation overlays in the PACS for lesions, aneurysms, and tumors. So you can surf through the slides with color-coded pathologies, yeah? In addition to the quantitative reports. So these are the reports that you would get if you have the full package. So a 2-page volumetry report, report on white matter lesions. You see here, that's by intention, the reports are quite generically named. So it's a volumetry report. It doesn't only apply to dementia diagnosis, but as we all know, also in diseases or autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis, brain volume loss becomes more and more important also as a surrogate of therapeutic monitoring. And the lesion report can be used also to diagnose vascular dementias, for instance, as the system does not only provide you with lesion dynamics, so differentiating new and large from old lesions, but also based on diagnostic criteria, provide you with the regional distribution in terms of MS typical and untypical locations, and quantifying that in terms of both lesion quantity and lesion volume. Aneurysm detection and tumor detection complete the portfolio at the moment, supposed to grow even further. Yeah. Let me draw your attention on one of the applications just to provide an example, brain volumetry. That's the reporting you see already here. We try to provide the pathological findings as visual as possible, and also building a bridge for the radiologist, what they're used to look at the moment. So at the aspects of the patient, predefined slices from mesotemporal down to the median cut through the brainstem. So you can orient yourself, build a subjective opinion. Then you're presented with the global brain volumetry results with schematics highlighting any pathologies at the level of the brain lobes, including hippocampus, ventricles. You have a spider graph that will help you also here a little bit in a zoom in to provide you with pattern recognition, so you can differentiate, let's say, regional atrophies from global atrophies, and that helps you in making the right choice in terms of diagnosis, for instance. And also, we provide you with longitudinal percentile graphs that help you even to detect pathological process, neurodegenerative process ahead of them hitting the pathological part. Here, for instance, in an early Alzheimer patients, you see here a decline in the percentiles of hippocampus, but not touching the pathological range yet. So quite indicative for an early phase. So what does it mean when we're talking about percentiles? Simply, we take the data from our normative population. As I mentioned, 8,000 patients or young healthy individuals aged 10 to 99 years, apply the standard method for normal values, so Gaussian distribution, take the mean, 2 standard deviations left and right, and this defines the borders, the edges of the normal range. And to cope with the overlap of healthy population, applying this standard methodology, we also apply a second cut off with 4 standard deviations, where you have almost 100% of the healthy populations within. That means you get 2 tiers of a pathology rating. That can be applied not only to supratentorial volumes, but also to infratentorial ones, like in the diagnostic of PSP, where it's always a question, a little bit of your fantasy, whether you spot a hummingbird here in the brainstem or not. The pattern, the spider graph will direct you already to the fact that this is a atrophy of the mesencephalon. Looking at the table, you will see it's a percentile of 1.2%, hence pathological. And last year at ECR, we have been showing that using this measure, just look at the percentile, is equally precise than the classical MTPR midbrain to pons ratio that you typically calculate by using just the area here of the midbrain and put into relation to the area of the pons. Yeah? So there are multiple of pathologies you can use this objective methodology. Yeah. And you might ask, so how objective is it? So how precise can such a methodology deep learning based B. So just one piece of answer to that. There are multiple, of course. Just we took one study from the UK. It's an Alzheimer's study, but this is beside the point. We were more interested in the fact that in that study there were 178 repeated measurements, and if you measure the same patient, the same structure twice at the same day, you expect typically the same results, right? But we all know patients move a bit inside the MRI. You have some blood pulsation, so the tissue you want to measure moves a bit, so that all leads to some differences, deviations. And if you plot then this percentile deviation from this mean of the multiple measurements here on the y-axis for several brain regions, you see here that for the whole brain we see quite a good reproducibility. So this deviation is in the range of 0.2, 0.3% maybe, and with that is significantly better than an academic gold standard solution like FreeSurfer from Harvard Medical School. Yeah? And if you, let's say, calibrate it a little bit to your understanding of physiological aging of the brain, then you see that this physiological aging of the brain is 0.1 to 0.3% per year, and we find yourself in the ballpark. Just one caveat, of course, that only applies if you standardize the acquisition parameters, so same scanner, same sequence parameters, of course. And as this is a wrap up from RSNA, I would like to present one, from my perspective, very important study that the colleagues from the Ludwig-Maximilian University of Munich in Germany have performed. And you see the interim analysis here of a study trying to get an idea on how the system, this mdbrain system, can help you with diagnostic accuracy. And the colleagues approached that question by getting gold standard Alzheimer, frontotemporal dementia, and healthy or images from Alzheimer patients, frontotemporal dementia patients, and healthy individuals, and then asking in a very blinded way radiologists at different educational levels to rate them. Everybody got 5 points, and they had to be allocated depending on how sure the patient, the radiologist was, which diagnosis wasn't the right one. So he had to allocate those 5 points. And you see here what the junior radiologists did. So radiologists in training, RR2, RR1 were board certified radiologists or radiologists in training in their last year. And here in brown, the board certified neuroradiologist. Without, you're always dotted, and with in a solid line. Yeah? You see two things, yeah, for Alzheimer here, for instance. Number one, even the board certified radiologists benefited in terms of diagnostic accuracy from using the system, which, please keep in mind, doesn't give you a diagnosis, just helps you with pattern recognition of the atrophy, right? But the junior, the group became, so the rookies here in green improved that much that they reached the precision of the board certified neuroradiologist just using the system as an auxiliary method. Yeah. At the same
Jens,
time, the question. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you. We only have 15 minutes left and another speaker waiting.
Okay.
So maybe you can come to an end. Thank you.
Sure, I'm done. I'm almost done. I just wanted to wrap up with one word on efficiency. So it's always the question: can you save time? And we did a study, a multi-center study, and can shortly say yes, we can. An average by 25%, in particular in new degeneration, can be even more. Yeah, and that's my final slide. And if you sum that up, you can say what the system provides is efficiency through precision and speed. Yeah, and it's also simple to integrate via the deep COS. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this great talk. Maybe you can stop sharing your screen and I can go back. Thanks a lot to Jens. So I'm very happy to present our last speaker, Professor Alexander Huppetz, who is a radiologist and the CEO and founder of NeoQ, the company behind Radio Report. Alexander is the managing director also of mobile medicine, outpatient imaging and preventive medicine, Ernst von Bergmann Klinikgruppe. And he is a radiologist in the outpatient department of Charité and managing director and radiologist Imaging Science Institute a scientific cooperation between the Charité University Hospital of Berlin and Siemens AG and Bayer AG in a private-public partnership. Alexander, so I'm already knowing a little bit of your talk, so I'm really excited to listen to your talk and presentation. Handing over to you, and I stop sharing my screen.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. We heard some wonderful application of AI, but the problem is how to report these results in clinical routine. And I will present you Radio Report, a novel reporting solution which perfectly integrates the result of AI into the clinical workflow. We are a medical company, so we have been founded by physicians, and a lot of physicians are working on the solution. What we have today in clinical routine, the report quality is insufficient. In addition, there is a missing structure in the reports, and all the major societies recommend some IT-based reporting software. The only problem is until now, there is nothing which can be used in clinical routine. So this is the workplace of the radiologist today. And hopefully this is the workflow, the workplace of the radiologist in the future. So there is still the PACS system, there is the RIS system, and for nearly every patient, we can use a very novel reporting system, which will be integrated to the PACS and RIS system. And my talk today, we can integrate AI in the workflow, but we can also provide data for AI development. And to just mention the 4 steps of reporting. So the first one is what we in majority use today in radiology. This is the unstructured free text dictation. The next step was the standardized reporting. That means with a standardized terminology, but without IT support. Then the next step was structured reporting with the juxtaposition of decision tree elements and free text. And what I will present today is guided reporting, the innovation of Radio Report. And what does it mean, guided reporting? You will understand at the end of my talk, you will understand this graph because it's a software developed by radiologists. It follows the requirements of everyday practice, and it acts as a virtual companion guiding the user through the entire reporting process. And for the first time, the free text is completely replaced by a sequence of mouse clicks and subsequently by 100% automated and structured text. And we have developed a tool which can be speed up the reporting process, and you will see for the first time fully machine readable data. So mentioning a practical example, so we are here in a work list. This is the work list of Radio Report, but it could be also other work lists. And with a deep integration of DeepC and some AI tools, we have here a warning coming from the AI tool. So we have a patient with intracranial hemorrhage. So the first thing what we would like to know is what we open the patient and we see there were 3 AI solutions which have been used in the data sets. The 2 were negative, also a very important message. And this one, the ICH, was positive. So the first thing what you would like to know as a radiologist, to see the images, to confirm the result of the AI. And in this case, we can confirm. And this is very important because we digitally confirm. So we close the loop for the AI. We're providing the result if the result of the AI was accepted, yes or no. But for a clinical report, the hemorrhage is not enough. We have to classify the hemorrhage. So we have seen the images in this patient, and in this patient, it was a subdural hemorrhage. And now we go through the guided reporting process. So step by step, we are providing the full report process. For example, here some details about the indication and about the patient. And then we go further in the reporting. And then we are here, we are coming to the folder number 5. And you see in this folder, the result has already been pre-filled by the AI and by the approval of the radiologist. So in our patient, we have a finding, we have a subdural hematoma. Of course, in clinical routine, there are much more data which are needed for the treatment of the patient. So we provide these additional data manually. It's on the right side. We characterize, we measure the density, we measure the bleeding. Then we characterize the hematoma. This is a result which is not provided today by the AI, but we can classify as a radiologist as an acute bleeding. And as a last step, we will select one representative image from the whole data set for the referring physician. This is this one. And we will put in this result in the report. But in clinical routine, unfortunately, there are more findings than the one finding from the AI. For example, our patient here has an acute sinusitis. So we continue with our guided reporting process. You see here the folder number 6. The cortex in our patient is normal. The basal ganglia are normal. The brainstem is normal. Next step, the CSF normal. And then we go to the facial skeleton. We select the finding manually. We select the sinus. We click I know because I know the pathology. I select from all possible pathologies the acute sinusitis. I characterize the sinusitis on the right side and the maxillary sinus. I can further characterize the sinusitis. I add all these information, some are already pre-filled. And then in the next step, I recommend the consultation of the neurologist. And now we will have for the first time a fully digitally prepared reporting text based on our selection. The software has prepared a finding section and the impression section. And as a radiologist, final step is now confirm and export the data. And what is very important, you see here, this impression section in this patient was automatically created based on our software solution. So there is no reporting by dictation system. This was created by the software based on our solution. And you can see I can report the finding of the AI solution, but in addition, I can report all other findings which might happen in a CT of the brain. And then I can also report the negative findings and the recommendation. And just to briefly mention another pathology, we are back in our work list. We have here a warning in a patient, a large vessel occlusion was detected. So same process, we will see the images, we confirm the occlusion, we close the loop for the AI. We have to further localize the occlusion. It was in the M1 segment on the right side. And you see, I go in the reporting process, and on the folder number 4 in this time, there is already a pre-filled, there are pre-filled information. So there was a finding, there was an occlusion of a vessel. I have characterized or I have localized the occlusion of the vessel. It's depicted automatically here in this localizers. I fill in the additional information. I select a reference image, and same as in the last example, I have prepared now a full report without any typing errors, without any omissions. I have typed a complete report based on my selection with the impression, which is very clear, which can be additionally used directly for the treatment planning. And based on the perfect integration of the AI solution into our reporting, into our guided reporting tool, we are able to dramatically reduce the time for the whole analysis and reporting process. We have errors which are free of any typing, of any orthographic errors, and these missense errors of wrong understanding, which are very frequent the case today with our dictation system, they no longer happen in our report. So to conclude, guided reporting combined with AI integration, it's a very fast reporting process. We have very clear messages in the reports. It's the language of the referring physician. Guided reporting is a high level of support for radiologists in training. We have a language independent process. So these report I can print in different languages. So New Horizon for international teleradiology. And for the first time, we have this double closed loop. That means the first loop was the feedback to the AI, was the result correct or not? And in addition, we have new high quality data for the further development of the AI. So for example, in the AI solution from Avicenna, the ICH, I expect in the future that localization details or measuring the size of the bleeding can be done automatically based on the data sets with guided reporting. And guided reporting and the integrated DeepOS platform will deeply change AI development, both from a cost and a time perspective, because we can provide very high quality data for the AI development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alexander, for this great talk. So we have heard really amazing talks and seminar speakers tonight. So to sum up, we have heard some experiences from early adopters in hospitals and the trust that has been built over the last couple of years, up to the deep workflow integration with structured reporting and how this can be achieved with a collaboration in a ecosystem approach. So we have 3 minutes left. I would love to take some questions and pick up some questions that we had in the chat and that I have written down. The first question in the chat was already partially answered by Daniel, a really great answer. I enjoyed it. I wanted to pick up the question and also ask the question to the other panelists. Unfortunately, by the way, Daniel had to leave for the next meeting. So the question is around the accuracy, validation, and generalization, and the general property of AI to be perceived as a kind of black box. So the question is, how much transparency is there in the AI tools used so far in neuroradiology and in general in radiology? And maybe I can, someone of the AI company speakers can pick up the question. Jens, possibly would be great if you could give us your answer.
Yeah, I tried to address that already during my talk, right? So in particular, if it comes, let's say, to segmentation tasks, we think that providing a complete data set with a superimposed, let's say, color-coded lesions, for instance, or aneurysms or tumors, you can provide a part of the trust at least. And what we do outside, let's say, those kind of platform solutions provide also, let's say, an additional auxiliary browser-based platform where you can even interact with the system. So you would be even able to, let's say, change annotations if you believe the system was not correct, and hence produce an, let's say, an optimal report. So
totally agree.
Can be elements of let's say, opening the black box, closing the black box, as you like.
Yeah, no, that totally agree. Really like your answer. So I have a question also for Tracy. So you have made and accumulated a lot of experience within Lunit already about the introduction of AI into clinical practice. What do clinical users most appreciate? What's your take and your experience?
And again, I think I've said a few times, I think understanding what their workflow is, understanding where they want to use it and how it can benefit, because again, that sets the expectation. And also, we certainly find a lot of customers like to try. They want to try it with their own data. They want to see how they could use it, and I think it's really important that we work in collaboration with customers to get that value for them.
Absolutely. So thank you, Tracy. I have one last question to Alexander. I would love to get your perspective. You're not an AI company with NeoQ and Radio Report, but you have a very broad overview and a very interesting perspective of AI and the adoption in clinical practice. So it's a similar question to you. How do you perceive the current adoption and introduction of AI into clinical practice? Where have you seen already value creation opportunities of AI?
So in my perspective, so there is a lot of interest in the market. So I see nearly in all the radiology departments we are visiting, they are interested in AI. There are some doubts about the power of AI, But finally, everybody has the same problem. So as you mentioned, during the night, during holiday periods, so it's so difficult to get specialists 24 hours in the department. So I think the expectation is there will be support by the AI in, I would say, in some times of the day, and in the future, maybe to increase the accuracy of all the reports, to implement AI in all the workflow in all the reports.
Absolutely, especially the last thing that you said, like this building this bridge to other applications like reporting, I also see as a key element of success in AI adoption. So again, thanks to all the speakers. Your talks have been really terrific. I bring up again the overview. We heard a really interesting talk from Daniel Chow from UCI, then a great product presentation and deep insights about the RSNA 2021 from Tracy, as well as from Jens from mediaire, and then from Alexander from NeoQ Radio Report. I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone. A big thanks to the speakers plus the audience. For 80 people joining this webinar, it's really fantastic to have everyone here and bring AI into clinical practice. Thank you very much. And we are looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.